Hey guys, it's your boy APT back once again, and today we are going to be reviewing the brand new album from Eminem called the Marshall Mathers LP number 2.
Rock this house until we knock it down, so turn the volume loud, 'cause it's into the AM. So crank the bass up like crazy, let yourself go, let yourself go.
Thank you for tuning into this review. I am APT, and today, as you guys know, when an album drops or leaks on the internet, I like to review it for you guys to let you know whether you should buy it, download it, or leave it alone altogether. Now, as you guys know, Eminem has been working on the follow-up to his last CD, Recovery, since 2012, and in August of this year, he dropped a commercial announcing that the album was going to be titled the Marshall Mathers LP2. Now, usually when an artist does this, it's because they're like in the twilight of their career and they want people to be reminded of some of their best works that came out, so that way people will go and buy it. Now, given how much talent Eminem has, I actually did not think that this was a tactic that he needed to use, especially since the Marshall Mathers LP, the first one, was so world-renowned. Like, it was critically acclaimed. It was like the album that really put him on the map hard, and it sold like tens of millions of copies. But aside from just the sales of the album, it was a monumental hip-hop album, you know? It came out when he had a whole lot of angst, and he was facing backlash from critics who said he was cussing too much or being too misogynistic. So when that album came out, it was sarcastic in tone, and it had like a serious vibe to it. The beats were really, really dark, and Eminem did all he could to display that not was he just about being funny and corny, but also about being lyrical, about having different flow patterns and different voices and stuff like that. So to name this new album the Marshall Mathers LP2, let's just say it had a lot to live up to. So you guys are probably wondering to yourselves, did this album live up to the first Marshall Mathers LP, and how does it compare to other rap albums that have come out recently? Well guys, I've had a chance to listen to the album, and I'm going to give you my take on it. Now, in terms of content, for starters, the majority of the content that Eminem tends to go through on albums is pretty much still here. So, you know, in terms of him being misogynistic in parts towards women on certain songs.
I got 99 problems and a bitch ain't one. She's all 99 of them. I need a missing gun.
Using different voices to express different characters on certain songs.
Back with the Yoda of rap and a spasm. Your music usually has them.
Using a wide variety of flow patterns.
So there's nothing for me to fall back on. I know no other trade, so you better trade your fucking mics in for some toolboxes.
And of course, making the occasional pun here or there.
Bitch, you just need a helmet. If you think you're special, you're retarded.
All these things are on this album, and these are also things that were on the Marshall Mathers LP. So in that respect, it feels similar in certain parts. Another way that this sequel feels similar to the first Marshall Mathers LP is that he actually makes a lot of references to some of the songs that were on that album. For example, just the skit. Just the only skit that's on this album, the way it starts off and ends, it's basically the entire skit that was in the middle of the last song on the first album called Criminal.
Hurry the fuck up. Thank you.
Where it's like, you know, the gunshot goes out and he's running, he hops into a car, he shoots a dog, like, except there's no music there. So when I heard it, I was like, oh my God, he actually, like, you know, went back to that LP and used this thing as a skit. Like, to me, it kind of blew my mind. It was kind of amazing. And then, of course, he's got other call-outs where, like, he'll say a certain lyric here or there, or he might, you know, use a song sample for one of his other songs and mix it into one of the newer songs.
Went to Burger King. They spit on my onion rings. I think my karma's catching up with you.
So in terms of, like I said, recalling and reminiscing and going back to some of the previous subject matter, that's all there. Now, with that said, that doesn't necessarily make this album feel like the first Marshall Mathers LP. And I kind of debated about whether or not that was a good thing or a bad thing, because on the one hand, if you're calling it a sequel to the previous LP, you're hoping that it's going to feel similar to how that LP felt. But on the other hand, you gotta be realistic, because he's at a different part in his life now. You know, back then he was kind of like the underdog still, and so it was easy for him to say a lot of stuff that was more shocking because it was coming from him and we hadn't heard it before. But now, 13 years later, we've heard a lot of this stuff. So, you know, him saying the B word, or him calling girls certain names, or him using certain language, like, it's not the same shock value. And I think ultimately that's what makes this album feel different. It's not that he's not going back to those roots or saying those things, it's that you can't really go back to the shock value of something once it's already come out. Now, this does not by any means make the LP bad. It just means that it's different. So there's a lot of differences on this album. For one, a lot of the beats that are on this album are a lot different. You know, on the first LP, they were a lot darker and moodier, and, you know, they were very minimalistic at times. Whereas this one, you have some songs that are full-out pop songs, like, for example, the song he has with Rihanna called Monster.
Friends with the monster, the son of my bitch.
where he's talking about the typical, oh, fame is a monster, and how I didn't expect to turn into this thing, typical, oh my God, fame is horrible type stuff. And then he has other songs that are poppy that are just weird. For example, the song called So Far.
The public stall dropping a football, so every time someone walks in the john, I get mad.
It sounds almost like a rehash of Rock This Way mixed with a little country twang. And when I first heard the beat, I was like, what the heck is this? Like, I am not going to like this whatsoever. And then the song started, and actually it really sounded more like a song off of the Slim Shady LP in terms of the subject matter and in terms of him talking, goofy talk and telling like this weird story while also mentioning other types of things. I mean, it was an interesting song. So the beat threw me off initially, but the words made me like the song. And in fact, that can be said for a lot of the songs in here that are kind of poppy. Like even the one he has with Kendrick Lamar called Love Game.
Like an abortion, they booked you for manslaughter. You beat the case and I caught you.
Like that is a really, really poppy beat. Like when I heard it, it almost sounds like circusy to me. But again, I like the story that he's telling. It's a funny offbeat story that really sounds more like the Slim Shady LP again. Come to think of it, this is actually a good mixture for Eminem, like, because he has some songs that feel sort of similar to the Marshmallows LP, the first one. Some songs that sound similar to the Slim Shady LP. And then he has songs like Headlights.
And your mental state's deteriorating slow, and I'm way too old to cry. This shit is painful though, but I forgive you. So does Nathan, yo.
Where he gets more introspective and it feels more like the Eminem Show. So like I said, there's serious songs in there, there's goofy, funny songs, and of course, there are songs where he's just displaying pure lyrical skill. Like for Rap God.
You assuming I'm a human, what I gotta do to get it through to you, I'm superhuman.
Like he literally raps like 97 words in like 15 seconds. Like it's incredible. Now, this doesn't mean that the LP doesn't have its flaws. And it's not anything in like a big way where it's like they're not enjoyable, it's just noticeable. The main problem, of course, is that, again, you're comparing this to the first Marshmallows LP. And so I have both these albums now. And when I go listen to the first LP, like the way it starts off with, Kill You and then ends with Criminal, there's really a distinct flow that goes with that album. Like, you're trying to set mood to mood and go story to story, but still have a flow that's like effortless throughout. With this album, honestly, it jumps around in places. Like you'll go from a song that's really, really poppy to one that's supposed to be introspective, to one that's being misogynistic to women, to one where he's talking about his kids. And they kind of jump all over the place. So it almost has, it's not like a mixtape, but it just kind of has a feeling of like, in some ways he was trying to go one direction and then decided to like switch it up and then, okay, now I'm gonna go back in this direction I was going before. It has that kind of feel. So it's not always consistent throughout. Also, the last song on this album, Evil Twin.
So who's left? Lady Gaga? Mess with the Bieber? Nah, F with Christina. I ain't fucking with either Jessica, neither.
It is by no means a bad last song. It's just not a song that I expected to close out the album. Again, you're going off history like with Criminal and with My Dad's Gone Crazy and that odd bonus track that was on Recovery at the end. Like, these are songs that felt like, oh, this is the end of the album. You're saying thank you for listening, good night. This one, again, it's a great song, but just in terms of the flow of the album, it doesn't feel like it's the end of the album. Now, to be completely fair, I am reviewing just the basic version of this album, okay? I haven't yet gotten the deluxe version with the extra 5 songs, so I'm gonna review those 5 songs at a later date. But if you were just to get this CD by itself, you would think, is this the end of the album? This is it? Like, there should be a more defining song to end the album. So overall, guys, it's like this, all right? Eminem as he is now is never gonna be the Eminem as he was before. So, when that first Marshall Mathers LP came out, he was in a different situation. He wasn't quite as famous as he was now. And so he could say a lot more and have more shock value. Now when he says it, on some levels, it feels like he may be trying too hard on some parts, and other parts you realize that this is who he is, and he has a fan base to cater to. But even with that, this is still lyrically, in terms of like the flow of stuff and how he paces things out and some of the wordplay he uses, is still one of the better rap albums to come out this year. The only problem again is that by calling it the Marshall Mathers LP2, he's essentially comparing himself to himself. So if we're going off that, it's not as good as that first LP. It's still a great album, but you're comparing an album that got worldwide acclaim, went diamond, and is pretty much loved by every hip hop fan known to man. This one, I gotta be honest, some of the beats on there are gonna turn people off. Some of the things that he's talking about in terms of some of his goofy stories, which I personally like, aren't necessarily going to be liked by other people as much. But at the end of the day, it's still an Eminem album, and he's still good at what he does. I'm a huge fan. This is one of those albums that I know for sure I'm going to be listening to in my car over and over again, but it's also one of those albums that I know I'll probably get more enjoyment out of it than possibly some of my friends will. So the rating that I would have to give this album, if I'm being honest, is a 7.5. It's definitely better than Relapse, I'll give you that, but it's not as good as Recovery and it's definitely not as good as the Marshall Mathers LP, but it's still Eminem, and I honestly believe that you will get some enjoyment out of it if you listen to it a few times and give it a chance. That's all I got for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to this wonderful review. Be sure to go to my YouTube page at youtube.com/APTsongs for more of these wonderful reviews, as well as some of my own personal music videos and parodies. I'm APT, and I will catch you guys on the next review. I'm out. Peace.
Say fuck it before we kick the bucket. Life's too short to not go for